So we're going to see how this all goes. Hi, friends. I am so happy to be back with y'all for day 3 of quantum creativity and this exploration through the trifecta that we have been playing with in terms of creation and maintenance and destruction, and really playing with these 3 primal, universal, cosmic energies that any of us who are really flexing our creative muscles, we get to play in these realms. We get to experience what happens when we let ourselves fully be in our creator archetype. This is what we did on day 1 of quantum creativity. We played with the creator and we talked a lot about coming from the void, starting from nothing, from a blank page and a blank canvas, breaking the silence, causing the flow to come forth, and really becoming agents of this power of manifestation, agents of change, agents of creation. And that in order to continue to create our creations, they have to pass a test of relevance. So this is what we talked about on day 1: is can we keep leaning into this idea of relevance? Are we willing to really ask ourselves and get real with ourselves? Is what I'm creating still relevant for me, for my people, and for the world? If it is, then great, we can transition into the sustainer or the maintainer. And in this energy, this second primal universal energy of maintenance, we get to really hone and refine our skill of protecting, of preserving, of maintaining that which continues to be relevant, right? And relevant really means that it's continuing to contribute to progressive change. So this big spectrum of relevance. We talked about being a mother, being a parent, how that, of course, is a very relevant continuation, right? That is something that is absolutely 100% worth continuing to protect, worth sustaining these beings who come through us. And of course, being a parent is such a beautiful metaphor for all of the projects that we mother, that we caretake, that we steward, that come through us, right? That channel through us. And what we talked about with the sustainer is that too much emphasis, too much attention on maintaining, especially if we can recognize that we actually are holding on rather than letting go, that we're holding on out of fear because we don't want to let go, right? We're afraid of letting go. We want to stay in the known. That's when we get into trouble, because that's when stagnation happens. And when stagnation happens, that is when our friend, the destroyer, shows up. This is the dance that we get to do today. So, today, day 3 of quantum creativity, we are talking about this beautiful medicine, and it is beautiful medicine, right? Of the destroyer. This is the medicine of compost. This is the medicine of penicillin and mold. This is the medicine of transformation, of transmutation. This is really alchemy, right? This is alchemy. The destroyer is part of this alchemical process. What happens in metamorphosis inside the chrysalis between caterpillar and butterfly, that is absolutely destroyer energy, right? Destroyer medicine. So let's feel into this a little bit. The first thing to say, I think, about the destroyer is that it might feel a little extreme, destroyer, right? It's like, ooh, I don't know if I want the destroyer to come near me. And that's legit, right? So maybe the first thing for us to know is we can reframe this destruction in our psyche for ourselves as a gentle, organic process of disintegration of anything that is no longer relevant, anything that has lost its relevance. One of the things we talked about yesterday was dead skin cells, right, on our skin, how they slough off, and that happens really easily and naturally. That's a great example of creation, maintenance, destruction, right? So easy. And when we exfoliate, we help that process along, right? And then we get to move back into radiant skin, into vibrancy, into that juicy creation energy. So this is the destroyer, and this destroyer moves in to remove, right? To remove that which is no longer relevant for us. And when it has done its job of removing that which is irrelevant, then once again, we go back into the void, right? We go back into the sweet, sweet void, the darkness of the blank canvas, of the empty page, of the meditative state where we are asking, what's next? What's next, creator? What's next? Capital A artist, like, may I be an instrument in your hand? Use me, create through me. I'm ready. I'm available. I'm available to be a channel for your art, for your beauty, for your mastery. So I would love to read a little excerpt from the Kim Cran's archetype deck, Wild Unknown, that this card comes from. The destroyer is the final in the three archetypes of the trio of existence, as we have been talking about, which comes from the Vedas. Has necessary yet painful work to do in the world. We'll talk about why the pain, right? Culturally, we have an aversion to endings, and we hang on to permanence as a signifier of success. Yet the destroyer pulls the rug out from underneath relationships, jobs, homes, and all forms of security. It's the part of us that wants things to end. Its painful orientation is to uncover our true purpose. The destroyer does not let us linger long in comforts, as it knows not much happens in that realm. We talked about that yesterday too. And day one, we did some tapping on that even. It seeks out, yes, with its piercing eyes, it seeks out stagnancy from a distance, and the rest becomes history. In the old myths, this is the moment when heads begin to roll, the ground opens up, and castles crumble. Hold on for the ride. The destroyer has arrived. So a few other archetypes that I wanted to pull in with the destroyer are the sword. This is also from Wild Unknown Archetypes deck. I love this depiction of the sword. I always think of Kali Ma, who is beautiful goddess, a Hindu goddess of destruction, and that the sword slices through and removes what we no longer need, what is no longer necessary, what no longer serves us. And then I also feel like this archetype is very helpful. It's the death card from the good old tarot deck. So this is also worthy of, noting, because I think we often get really freaked out by the death card. But if you really check out this card closely, you see that death is actually quite peaceful. The horse isn't like roaring into the scene. It is gracefully walking through, right? And that there are all of these people on the ground who maybe there's somebody who's dead, there's a woman kind of in this surrender pose, there's a child who's in curiosity, which is interesting. And then you have this Pope who is the Hierophant. You have this man of God, this person of God who has their hands held together in prayer. So this person in yellow, and you can also see on this card the rising sun in the background. So much about this death card shows us that death doesn't have to be scary and that it actually can be received graciously by us when we are connected to source, to spirit, to the cycles of all that is, the cycles of creation. And that there are new beginnings when we surrender, when we submit ourselves and we allow the destroyer to sweep away anything that is no longer relevant for us. Then it's so much more swiftly that we get to move into the new beginnings. So let's talk a little bit more about this destruction process. The fear that we have, the resistance that we have to the destroyer is always hinges on an attachment to holding on to what was, to holding on to the past. We talked about this in day 2 with the sustainer and the maintainer. And what is not progressive, what is not moving forward for the greater good, ends up being destructive, right? So this is really the way that I enjoy thinking about this, is that change is working in our favor. Change is working for us. Change is working through us. And one of the things that I love so much about this teaching is this reminder that change is inevitable, right? Change will happen regardless of whether we say yes or not. And change occurs in 2 ways. Path 1, how change occurs, we say no. I don't want it. I'm not ready. I'm not ready to let go. I don't want to let go. No. And we kick and scream, right? And we drag our heels and we fight the entire way. And change happens anyway. Decay sets in anyway. When the destroyer is present, there aren't too many ways to get around it, right? So we can say no, but resistance is futile. Resistance is futile. And ultimately, what needs to be destroyed will be destroyed. And that is in the greater good, even if it doesn't feel very good, right? The other path to change is saying yes. Yes, we can say yes to change. We can say yes to the destroyer. And in saying yes, we harness the creative power of change. It's almost like we become the knight riding that beautiful white horse. And I see your question, Kat, around, does the death card always have a knight on a white horse? No, it doesn't. This is the Rider-Waite tarot deck, which is a pretty iconic deck and has been replicated and emulated many, many times. And in this deck, this is how death is portrayed. But you'll always see, well, you'll see different things. It's fun to look at different aspects of the death card. But something that I really love about this interpretation is that those strings of reminders that this can actually be a peaceful process. We can go peacefully. We can go gladly and peacefully with gladsomeness in our heart and gratitude and say thank you. And in that saying thank you, we get to become the knight riding the horse and actually find that rhythm, and then more swiftly. And this is really, if there's anything that I desire for all of us from this exploration, it's to be able to move through this cycle of creation, maintenance, destruction more swiftly, so that we spend as much time as possible in creation energy. And I think one great example of this is roses. I have been thinking a lot. I've been ruminating a lot. I've been praying a lot. I've been bathing. I've been really tending a rose garden this summer, and it's been really, really beautiful. I've been spending a lot of time out there. And as I have been harvesting roses and drying the petals as they fall off the blossoms, I also have been deadheading the roses, which my mother showed me how to do correctly. So I've been deadheading the roses, and this is such a beautiful example of this process of destruction, of harnessing the destroyer. So death is occurring, right? Life is occurring, death is occurring, all on the same plan. And what happens when we use the pruners, right? Which is the sacred sword, is doing the pruning. And by the way, we're moving into autumn here in the Northern Hemisphere. We are almost at the equinox. And I really think about the sword, the destroyer energy. I think about that a lot as autumnal energy, because this is a time when trees start to let go of their leaves, right? It's a natural time of doing some deadheading, of starting to prune some things back, right? So this idea of when I'm deadheading the roses, what happens is that more buds explode forth, and it's so beautiful. And it's such a rewarding process of removing that which is no longer relevant, those blossoms that have bloomed and then dropped their petals, and now they are past their expiration date. And then I get to go in with my sacred sword pruners, and I get to take off the dead parts, right? I get to take off that which is no longer relevant, and then new life bursts forth. So this process of destroyer is holistic, and it invites us into taking part and into saying yes and into doing that swiftly. I like to think about this as, please give me the strength and the wisdom to embrace this process of destruction with ease and with grace and with swiftness. There is a beautiful quote that maybe you've heard from science fiction writer Octavia Butler: change is God. So change is God, and it occurs all the time. And really, I think a great question is, how big, how hard, how explosive, how noisy, how gross, how messy does change have to become? Does change have to be before we take notice, before we lend a hand and help it move through more swiftly? And as I was thinking about this idea, it brought forth this song that I won't sing here because I couldn't do it justice with just me, because it's a 4-part song, but it's a song that I wrote. It's called Soft Breeze. And the main line is, soft breeze blows, you don't need a hurricane to change. And that feels like such an invitation for the destroyer. Can we pay attention to the parts of us, to our projects, to the relationships, to the situations in our lives that are dying, that are in the process of releasing? And can we get out our pruners and help it go swiftly? Can we notice the soft breeze and move through before the hurricane comes, right? So how much we're paying attention, so much of these teachings with this beautiful Vedic trifecta is really about harnessing these energies and participating in them. And I think, again, the goal is to spend as much time as possible in creation, which means that we do have to participate actively in the other two phases as they are asked of us, and then always be making the decision again and again to come back to creation. And suffering, right? So the Vedic worldview is that suffering is born of false expectations, a false perception, and inaccurate expectations. So another way to say that would be that what we expected turned out to be inaccurate. And what actually happened turned out to be accurate. So when we are clinging on and attaching to this false sense of reality, this false being that didn't even actually happen, we are holding on to this inaccurate reality. We are in this place of illusion, and that is where the suffering comes in. So the work here is to not ignore. Now, this podcast that I keep mentioning by Tom, his last name isn't occurring to me right now, but it's in the bonuses. If you've signed up for this series, it's not too late to do that in my bio and Instagram, or you can email me and I'll send you all the links. I can send you the link to this podcast, and he brings up this such a great point that ignorance, the root of ignorance is ignore. And what he says is that ignorance isn't actually being uninformed, that ignorance isn't that we don't know, that ignorance is a practice of basically the awareness being there and not taking action. So it is a lack of acting on what we know rather than a lack of knowing. I thought that was so fascinating. So when we are in ignorance, we are ignoring that which is true, that which we know, that which is right in front of our face. So in order to lean in the direction of the creator, of the creation, which is where we want to be, right? And I want us to embody the creator, the creatrix as much as we can as an archetype. We get to choose again and again to lean into the unknown, to recognize when stagnation is occurring, to remember that stagnation attracts the destroyer, attracts destruction. And to remember that longevity really happens naturally. Anything that is healthy in its longevity happens because it is still relevant. If it weren't relevant, the longevity would not continue to be there. So leaning in the direction of creation, of innovation, of creativity, of manifestation energy, that is when longevity will naturally occur. And the maintainer and the sustainer will be drawn where there is still relevance, where there's still freshness. And when we ignore projects, right? When we ignore relationships and when we don't keep things fed and nourished, guess who shows up? The destroyer. So this is really the work for us to, as a recap of this triumvirate, something comes into being from the nothing, from the void, and it continues to contribute to progress, to change for however long. And in the podcast, he points out this could be 15 seconds or 15 billion years, right? There is no rule for the longevity of relevance. At some point, that thing, that relationship, that situation, that project, that idea, it loses its ability, its capacity to contribute, to be relevant, to have relevance to the forward moving, juicy, positive, progressive change. And in that moment, it begins to disintegrate. And as it falls away, it gives rise to another burst of evolutionary change. So this is the most important thing really to know, is that anything that you need to maintain, as long as it's relevant, it will be maintained. You will have support. Support will show up, and the maintaining, the sustaining, the protecting will happen naturally. And then anything that needs to be let go, you'll lose your attachment to it. And eventually you'll let it go, and you get to choose whether you let it go graciously or let it go kicking and screaming. And I say you, and I'm also talking about me. We get to do this together. So my exercise, I have a little exercise for y'all if you want to play along with this. And this was actually inspired by my very first business mentor, Monica Shaw, who I actually just had the privilege of having an interview with her this morning for an upcoming summit that I'm putting on, which dropping a little seed that I'm so excited about this project that's coming later this fall. But she is Indian. She is the first generation American. Both of her parents immigrated from India. And so she's actually the first person who brought this teaching into my awareness of creation, maintenance, destruction as kind of the primal blueprint of universal energy. And she had us draw this map. And it wasn't until I actually was already planning this workshop that I came across in my computer a screenshot of the map that I made, that she inspired, that she, tasked us to create, which I thought was so brilliant. So this is really simple. You'll take a piece of paper and you'll create 3 columns. And in the left-hand column, you'll have creation. In the center column, you'll have maintenance. And in the right-hand column, you'll have destruction. You could also, the creator, sustainer, destroyer, however you want to label those. And then you can go through using this really simple map and simply do a brainstorm in those 3 categories. What are all of the projects? What are the scenarios? What are the energies? What are the relationships? What are the ideas? Anything that is in your psyche that you want to write down. This is a really beautiful exercise for getting clarity on where you are in those pieces. And you may even find that there are projects where you're not even sure where it lies, but you may feel pretty clear that where the liminal space is. Like maybe there is something that is in maintenance, but you feel that it has definitely begun to lose its relevance, and it's veering into the destroyer zone. So even writing that on the center line could be really helpful. And then really, so first step, this is a brain purge to lay out anything that feels relevant to you, that is pressing on you, maybe questions that you have or things that are taking up creative space in your life. And then from there, you get to assess what are, where does it lie in this categorization, in this map? And then even from there, getting to really check our own actions, our own thought processes around how am I approaching this now that I can clearly see that this is moving from creation into sustaining or maintenance. How do I act accordingly, right? How do I conduct myself in such a way that I'm paying really close attention to making sure that this project is still relevant as long as I'm going to give it energy, as an example. So this is your last final action step that I would really encourage you to dive into. If all of this feels really juicy and you want to take everything that we've learned in this quantum creativity workshop and weave it together into one physical thing that you can write on, that you can lay your hands on, that you can lay your eyes on and see what emerges. And I hope that there is indeed some clarity that helps you know how to move forward in the best way possible. So that concludes this beautiful journey. I mean, there's so much more to say, and that feels like the bulk of really what I want to share with you about these three archetypes. Know that the destroyer will always be destroyed, the creator will always be created, and the maintainer will always be maintained. And that you and I, we get to volunteer knowingly, consciously, with full awareness. We get to choose which of those three energies we are volunteering for, which of those three energies we are becoming an agent for. And I don't know about y'all, but I definitely want to be, as much as possible, an agent for the creator, an agent of creation energy, because it feels so, so good. Yes, loves, thank you so much for joining me in this journey. And as a final seed, I would love to invite you, if this has all felt really juicy and you want to go deeper, I'm going to be offering a really streamlined, elegant 5-day journey this fall in October called Becoming Prolific. And it is going to be 5 live sessions with me, 3 really deep dives in the teaching, in the curriculum, in these kind of 5 creativity codes, and then 2 calls where I can help you in real time unblock creative energy. So this Becoming Prolific journey is really about clearing the creative blocks and then igniting these 5 creativity codes to take any project from concept to completion. So if it feels ripe for you this autumn, if you feel like you are ready to sort of weed the creative garden of your projects and your endeavors and clarify what is most relevant, and then build a blueprint to move really swiftly through these cycles, this is made for you. I am so excited to offer it. One of the things I hear all the time is, how are you so prolific? How do you make so much stuff? And I am a generator, so I suppose that's maybe the most simple way of responding. And what I can share is that as a generator, I really love to help other people ignite those channels that feel dormant, that feel a little bit dusty and musty and cobwebbed in that creation energy. So yes, there is a blueprint and there is maintenance in keeping that blueprint fresh and relevant. And I'm really, really so excited to bring this through and offer it to my community this fall. And fall, is always a time of back to school, right? It feels like this time of, oh man, okay, it's Q4. We're moving into the final couple months of the year. And what do I really desire to create what really wants to be created through me this year that I have not yet taken steps on, or that I have taken steps on, but I have not yet completed. So that's really my prayer with this offering, is that I can help some of you to clear the blocks that are in your way, whether you haven't started, whether you are in the messy middle, or whether you need help crossing the finish line, that we can clear some of the blocks like procrastination and perfectionism and all of the pieces that get in the way of our creativity, and move into really embodying and downloading these 5 codes of creativity that are coming through that help us move from concept to completion. So if you're interested and intrigued, reach out, let me know, stay tuned. I'm going to put an offer out there in the next few days and would love to have you as part of it if you feel the call. Okay, beloveds, I wish you such a beautiful day. I wish you blessed quantum creativity. And I hope that you will continue to walk with these teachings and to let them move in you, and to really work with these cycles of creation, of maintenance and destruction, and always volunteer consciously and knowingly and willingly and joyfully to be an agent of change for creation energy. Okay, beloveds, thank you so much for being here, and I will bid you adieu until the next time. Much love. Take really good care.